So, Denise Imbesi, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Thank you. So nice. I'm doing great. Nice to be here, Will.
And where are you dialing in from?
I'm sorry.
Sorry, where are you dialing in from? I've been doing so many
I
podcasts
am
lately, my voice
in,
is cracking.
I know, that's okay. I understand. I am here in Orlando, Florida, USA, and it is always warm here, which is
hmm
a good thing, but also a bad thing. It gets old after a while.
It's getting cold here.
But
I would be happy with a little bit of warmth. So, why don't we start by you telling our listeners a little bit about yourself and what you do within the fitness industry?
Sure. I'm Denise Imbesi and CEO and founder of Muscle Mixes Music. I started the company back in 1988. Some of you weren't born yet. And I started the company because I was a DJ, but I was also a fitness instructor and realized very quickly that there was not a solution for continuous nonstop mixes in 32 counts, and the need that was needed back then. So we used to sell cassettes and CDs. And now, believe it or not, we still sell CDs, but mostly
Do you
people
really?
are
You
going,
still sell
we
CDs?
do.
Interesting.
Yes, isn't that crazy? Yeah. Please don't buy CDs anymore.
I know, right? It just
But
adds cost to the production chain.
well, I mean, yeah, we don't mind. We'll keep doing it as long as people keep buying it.
Mhm.
But obviously, more people are downloading and using our app now, and because people are consuming music through streaming mostly.
Yeah.
So we are a fitness music company that specializes in music for the fitness professional.
Perfect. So the reason that you and I talked before, and the reason I thought it would be great to get you on the podcast is that music has come into high relief. Obviously, it's something that's always been super important to fitness instructors, but this year, some of the restrictions and ways in which music can be used and utilized has really taken some instructors by surprise in terms of what they can and can't do when it comes to teaching live and virtual and on demand and all these different things. So I thought it would be really
Yep.
good for someone who is an expert within the music industry, particularly for fitness, to kind of give our
Yeah.
instructors a really good explanation of why the rights around music are so complicated when it comes to fitness classes. And so I thought you would be the perfect person to do it.
Sure, no problem. I'll do my best.
Yes.
And I do want to preface two things. Number one, that music licensing is different from country to country.
hmm
Um, However, there's some just general basic rules that apply everywhere.
Yep.
It's just the UK is actually the most different.
Yeah. This is about there's so many
I don't,
different bodies that are collecting money at different times.
yeah, well, they actually have a really great way of managing it. In the UK, they have one central place, one central sort of clearinghouse
hmm
for the artists, which we don't have in the US or in many other countries. So, but yeah, the reason why it's been difficult is because up until recently, up until COVID, in March, um, it has been the responsibility of the facility to
Mm.
pay the public performance license. Although in the UK it's a little different, but in most cases it's been the responsibility of the facility, and the instructor just kind of shows up, teaches their class, and leaves. The minute it goes to virtual, the music licensing changes, um, because when music is synced up with video, it's a different license altogether. And
hmm
that's why it's been, you know, everybody, I mean, we've been bombarded with questioning. And I think it's great in a way because instructors want to learn, what's happening. So it's become now the responsibility of the individual instructor, because before you would show up at a place of work and just teach your class and leave. I know it's a little different in the UK. So again,
Don't
I'm
worry, don't worry,
just
don't
going to
worry.
keep prefacing that.
We can skirt over the UK, and I can always do a little addendum. I should have said this at the
Okay, no.
start. My background is actually as an intellectual property lawyer, so I wasn't
Oh,
specializing in
wow.
music licensing, but I spent many years in my early career dealing with all the elements of copyright, and
Oh,
so I
oh,
have read
wow.
many legal pieces relating to all of the different copyrights that exist at the various
Oh,
places.
awesome. Awesome. Well, and I will say that I am not an attorney. I always like to
Mm-hmm.
say that disclaimer. I'm just a person that knows a lot of stuff about music licensing because this is our business, my business.
Yeah.
That's why it's changed so much, because now it relies on the responsibility of, the responsibility lies on that of the individual instructor, because in a way it's their business, right? It's their own business. And that's why it's changed. And do you want me to go into the detail of the different
Yeah,
licensing,
so
or?
I think I think what instructors would really like to understand is what are the different types, because I know that one thing that really confuses people is that there are different rights that exist in different parts of a piece of music. And I think if we
Yeah,
could break it right back to sort of all the different artists that contribute to music and what rights they might have, because I think a lot of instructors just see finished product on their Spotify and just think, why can't I just
right.
play that? I'm already paying for Spotify. Why can't I put that in my class? So maybe you could kind of
Exactly.
wind it right back and talk about like how the different rights elements relate to the different parts of the artistry that
Sure.
goes into a song.
Yeah, sure, no problem. Yeah, and a lot of people don't know this. You're right.
It's
To
complicated.
create, it is very complicated, and to create a song, and this is in general.
Hmm.
There's usually someone who writes the written word, the lyrics, and writes the music. That's called the writer.
Hmm.
And then there's somebody that performs the song, and it's usually called the artist. So because writers and artists are typically not um, lawyers or accountants, or marketing people, the writer is usually represented by a publisher. And the publisher, I like to call the publisher, is an accountant. They
Hmm.
keep track of your money,
Yeah.
and they go after your money too.
Yes.
And then the other side of it is the artist is represented typically by a record label.
Hmm.
And the record label is the marketing machine. Um, that's sort of in general. Now, sometimes when you look at Madonna, for example, she's the writer, she's the publisher, she's the artist, and she's the record label
Yeah.
on
Or
some of
does
her
she have a writing
songs.
credit?
Yes, exactly. Yes,
This is
absolutely.
this is this comes
So
down to the reason why Beyonce is a co-writer of every song on a Beyonce album.
every single song, exactly. And back in the 60s, 70s, when songs were written, there was almost one, two writers, that's it.
Hmm.
Now there's like 10 writers, oh, that guy was in the room and he got water for someone, so let's put
Yeah.
him in there. No, it's not really like that, but I mean, there are so many writers. And being a writer gives you a lot of money, because whether you perform it or not, I mean, that's where the money is. So
Hmm.
so in general, there's two separate licenses: um, the writer slash publisher, the artist slash label. Again, sometimes they're one and the same, but that's the way it's done. And every writer publisher um, in the U.S. is the only place in the world that has not agreed to a particular agreement that happened worldwide,
Hmm.
where in the U.S. back in the 50s, um, when music was played on the radio, artists were not getting paid for that music to play
Really, at all?
um, at all. The writer was, but the artist was not. And actually, I don't even want to say was. It's still that way with
Hmm.
terrestrial radio, regular radio.
Okay.
But with internet radio, they smartened up. They said, "Oh no, we're not doing that again."
Hmm.
So now they get paid when it's played on the internet radio, Pandora, and that kind of stuff. So the U.S. is the only country where they didn't sign. I forgot what the name of that treaty was, but so yeah, so a lot of artists were kind of pissed, but now they're happy because now they're getting paid.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't
Terrestrial
want to
radio
get
is
too
going away, so they're
terrestrial
starting
radio's
to be
going away.
okay with
Exactly,
it.
exactly. So I don't want to get, it gets really confusing. But in
Hmm.
general, there are two licenses, or two ownerships, I
Yep.
should say. Um, and the writer publisher has every country is different, but they have certain organizations that represent them. It's
Right.
a little bit more organized for the writer publisher. It's a little, when I say organized, meaning set fees, you don't have to negotiate, not all the time, but most of
Hmm.
the time. Whereas artist labels, you got to almost always negotiate
Right.
whatever uses you're choosing.
And this all
So
stems
does
down
that give
from,
you
yeah,
yeah,
and I
go
guess
ahead.
to it all stems down from the fact that I think that because we have all grown up consuming music for free on the radio or on apps and that are advertising funded, we sometimes have this sort of this supposition that music is something that is free rather than something that has value, right? And so it should be something that you
Yeah,
can use as you wish, when in reality people have created it, and like anything that anyone has ever created, there's a value associated with it. And so a lot of these rights
Yeah.
organizations exist, and whether or not they are nice rights organizations or not nice rights organizations, and I have different views about different ones. Sometimes they can be a little bit rough. What they are seeking to do is ensure that creators of content, and we all know what a content creator is now, right? But these are the original content creators from when the radio first came about, ensuring that people that create content get paid by the commercial businesses that use that content to further their own businesses. So a radio station, for example, would be taking in money from advertisers, and they are doing that through using the creations of artists, either writers or performers. And those bodies exist to collect their fair share for what they have created.
Absolutely. In the same way that an instructor wouldn't want someone to use their, a video of their content, right? Um, without getting paid, or using it to earn, revenue and stuff like that. So yeah, for sure. I mean, you explained it really well because you're an intellectual property attorney. You probably did a better job than I did. But yeah, so that's sort of, yes, you're right. That's the underlying, and it is confusing because we have gotten spoiled with all the free, I put my hands in quotes, with all
It's
the
a
free
podcast,
music.
but we're doing air quotes.
It's a podcast, but we're doing air quotes. Yeah, it has been free. Napster started that, and then of course now with Spotify and a lot of those companies, you pay $9.95 US and a month, and you get to, and I think people get confused, like, what do you mean? It's my music now, but it's really not, because once the subscription's over, it goes away. So
yeah, exactly.
yeah, so a precedent has been set, and there is that frame of mind for sure. Whereas in the music industry, I noticed it's completely different. Netflix did the right thing right from the beginning. We don't have that perception. We know it's okay. We know that it's required to pay to see a movie. You can't copy a movie. You can't download a movie without paying. So so there's a lot of so it's very complicated. And now that things are virtual, instructors are so confused.
Yeah,
and I
so
really
let's
feel
wind
for
it
them,
back to, say, when you started off in the late 80s and 90s, when
Yes.
virtual fitness wasn't a thing. So let's take that confusing factor out of it. So tell me, when you were creating the stuff that you were creating with Muscle Mixers back when you started, what was the problem that you were trying to solve for instructors?
Okay, that's a great question. So at that time, it's hard to imagine, but there weren't any compilations. A compilation is an album or a mix of different artists in one place. It just didn't exist back then. Now everybody's making playlists all day long.
Yeah, exactly.
Back then, yeah. I mean, the only thing that existed, if some of you remember, was like the best of the 70s, best of the 60s, K-Tel records, that kind of stuff. But other than that, it just didn't exist. So whenever we called record labels, they would hang up on me and say, "Are you crazy? No way can you do that." So the only option an instructor had was a record, a vinyl record of individual albums, or a song. There were
Wait. I'm gonna have to wind it back and ask this question. So are you telling me that some of the original instructors in the 80s, because this predates me, I'm late 90s, very, very late 90s, year 2000, 1999, maybe, I think I took my first class. Are you telling me that there were some instructors of fitness classes who would have like multiple records, like big black records, and they would put the needle down, teach the track, and then change the vinyl and put the needle down for the next? Oh my God.
They didn't have any other choice. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah,
They didn't have any choice, that's all there was.
And nowadays, if an app doesn't work for 3 seconds, instructors
get
really angry.
I know. It's so true. That is so true. Because they followed the dance teacher, and the dance teacher used to do that.
Right, yeah.
Put a song on, dance, do a routine.
But they would just put the same song on and then rewind back to the start and do the same song over and over again, right? There wasn't quite the requirement to have the mix, as you said.
Yeah. So at the time when we started in 1988, there was nobody doing that, I should say, legally. I mean, there were starting to become bootleg DJs that would, on the side of the road. I lived in New York at the time. So on the street, they'd have cassettes that you could buy that were illegal. And that's kind of what an instructor had to do, was call a DJ and say, "I'll pay you $100. I mean, that's what they used to pay back then. "I'll pay you $100, mix me a tape."
Crazy. So that would be
So
like you get the
it
ghetto
was
blaster with the high speed dubbing, and you.
correct.
So I remember this well from when I was a child of getting I think the first ever tape I got. So this ages me, was actually Paula Abdul "Shut Up and Dance" mixes. I remember it. I
Oh,
got it for
that's
like my 8th
awesome.
birthday or something. It's so good. In fact, I've got it on my Spotify now.
Oh,
I go back to it every
I'm
now
sure
and
you
again.
do. Yes, good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah. So that's what they did. Yeah. So we said, I was teaching and I was a DJ, and I went, this is a lot of work, and that's what the need was. The pain
Hmm.
point was, how do we get a mixtape legally? And then I didn't know anything about business. I was not a business person. I was a DJ and an instructor,
Hmm.
and figured it out. I used to DJ till 2, 3 in the morning. The next morning, wake up and teach a class. I could
So
never do
how?
that again.
But tell me a little bit about this. How did you figure it out?
Yes.
Like, what were the steps you went through in order to get from, this is a need that instructors have, to I'm going to start a company that fulfills this need?
It was very difficult because it didn't exist. When
Hmm.
you're working in an area that doesn't exist, it's much harder. Um, like I said, I would call the labels and they'd hang up on me. So what
Hmm.
I started to do was call independent labels. There were, fortunately with dance music, there's a lot of independent labels
Yeah.
that create sort of the underground style music. And I started doing deals with them.
Hmm.
A deal would be like, pay me in advance and you could sell 1,000 cassette tapes,
Yeah.
and then you'd have to pay me more,
Yeah.
that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And then we got to a point where we're talking the whole world. Nobody had a solution in the whole world.
Yeah. Mm.
So we started getting calls from England, Australia, Japan, and those rights that we cleared with those independent labels did not allow us to sell globally.
Yeah.
And we made a hard decision that, you know what, let's eliminate one license and just produce covers. And that was a big decision at the time,
Hmm.
because we didn't want to, we wanted to use the originals, but we couldn't get,
Right.
you
And
know, when,
so when you say
yeah, we
covers,
couldn't
you are
get the,
meaning original songs with not original performers.
correct. We
Right.
re-recorded the song, and we still
Right.
do this. We actually
Yeah.
go in. Yes, it's the same lyrics, same musical arrangement. Well, sometimes it's not. But so we still are liable to pay the writer publisher,
Hmm.
but because we become the artist, we become the record label, we eliminate one piece, and that allowed us to sell it globally.
Right. So, and
Um,
this, I think, is one of the biggest, and this is where it starts to get complicated again in digital. I want to put a pin in that for the time being. But I
sure.
think that when instructors think about the different types of music, they think about cover music, which is the stuff they hear
Hmm.
on the radio with a different singer. And then they think
That's right.
about original music. And that sort of is a big
Correct.
distinction. And obviously, cover music is the one that doesn't force you to pay performing rights licensing.
Correct. That's absolutely right.
Yeah, and
So,
so maybe you can tell me a little bit about the US. So for the UK listeners, they will know that there are a lot of gym chains who just only want to use performing rights free music, because I
that's
think
right.
it's like they did a big thing with the various agencies here a few years ago, but essentially it's like £1 or £2 or potentially more than that now, I actually forget, per class for using original music. And obviously when
Okay.
you times that over a 10 classes a day on a timetable times 7
Yeah.
days a
It's a
week times
lot.
52 weeks a year,
Yeah.
it really adds up.
Hmm.
So how does it work
That's
in the
that.
States?
Yeah, because yeah. So what we do, and I guess you guys call it PPL free, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Um, the way it works here, from my standpoint, is that we eliminate what's called a master. The sound. Okay, so the owner of the artist and that arrangement or that production, that performance,
Hmm.
is called a sound. Sound recording, or also called a master. Who
Yep.
owns the master? So we eliminate the master,
So you
and
eliminate Rihanna from the equation, but the writers
correct.
the writer still exists.
That's right. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Sometimes it is Rihanna, but sometimes it's not. So it's very easy for us. All we have to do is, by using the cover, we pay a set rate of 9 cents,
Hmm.
9.5 cents per song, per download, to the publisher. It's so easy. We
Right.
eliminate one whole complicated
And is the
piece.
difficulty there that that it's a standard fee for the
Mhm.
for the writer's license, but
Correct.
the performers element could vary so much depending on who the performer is, right? Because you have
Absolutely.
someone that's, you know, like part of their own band, they're producing great music, but they're not famous, and then you've got Beyonce, and the
Correct.
cost
Correct.
associated with that is so varied. Whereas by getting rid of the artist and using cover music, you're just being able to properly figure out, maintain, and predict what the cost
Exactly.
of that song will be.
Exactly. It's a set fee as opposed to having to negotiate.
Hmm.
And, sometimes the artist can say no. That's the other thing. I mean, and they did say no to us back then a lot.
Right,
So it
right,
was
right, right.
unheard of, I mean, they just announced Beyonce cut a deal with Peloton the other day. I don't know if you
Yeah.
saw that. I mean, that kind of thing would never happen back then.
Yeah.
But, of course, the labels and the artists are a lot more comfortable working with an established organization like Peloton that already
Yeah.
has the numbers. They don't like to take risk,
Yeah.
and they shouldn't, because they know that what they have is very valuable. So yeah, that's the reason why a lot of our, fitness music companies back then, we went to covers, because we had to make that decision. And
Hmm.
it was hard, because we want to give, and we've done a great job of getting as closely as we could to the original.
Hmm.
And sometimes, in some cases, if it's an old Motown song, it actually sounds better, because
Yeah.
you get rid of that,
Yeah. Yeah.
that
Yeah.
sound
Yeah.
of the record, the dust on the album. So, and we've pumped up some songs and stuff like that. And, some covers, I mean, are really popular, like "I'm Every Woman" by Whitney Houston.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was done by Chaka Khan originally. So
Yeah. Yeah.
covers,
Yeah.
if they're done well, can be great. Sometimes better, sometimes. So, yeah.
So the question that and this is where I think, so I think that for the most part, instructors really understand the concept of cover music, and how not using the original artist can mean that there are less fees associated with it. Because I feel that when you're teaching an in-person class, that was always the way it was, and I think people were pretty sort of understanding of that. I know that Beachbody
Yeah,
you used to work with Beachbody Live.
absolutely. Absolutely.
They used cover music, so it was original songs you hear on the radio, but it was covered. Les Mills have a big music production where they cover a lot of their music, although they
True.
do use some originals because they've got some relationships with production houses and music
Sure.
producers. But I think the bit that has taken everybody by surprise this year is that I think that a lot of instructors assumed that if they had cover music, they would be able to use that music to teach
Ah,
online. So they thought that
ah,
the original, I know I can't use the original, but the cover one I can use. So maybe you could just explain for everyone
mm.
listening,
That's a great question.
why is
Yeah.
it that the cover music that a lot of instructors thought of as fine to use whenever is not
Right.
okay in digital?
Wow, that's a great question. And I haven't heard that question much, but it makes sense, because here we are, all these years saying it's fine, you're
Mm,
good, and then all of a sudden, no, you can't use it on.
yeah.
So that's a real
Right at the
big
time, like
bummer.
gyms are closed, you've got no classes, and also that music that we told you was cover, you
Yeah,
can't use
yeah, can't use it
that.
anymore. Yeah, so throw everything
Yeah, yeah.
away.
So
Yeah.
basically, you can do it in silence. Get a metronome.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay, so the answer to that is, it's complicated. So remember, we talked about earlier how there's a set fee when
Hmm.
you pay the we pay, it's called the mechanical
Yep.
use
Yeah,
license
yep.
for selling. Okay, so there's two licenses that almost everybody's familiar with. Number
Hmm.
one is the public performance license.
Yep.
So when you play music in a public place, the
Yep.
facility is responsible for playing it. It's also a very reasonable price. It's a couple hundred
Yep.
US dollars a year, easy peasy, right?
Hmm.
Go to what we do, selling a piece of work.
Hmm.
Um, and we pay 9.5 cents
Hmm.
per song per use.
So
Download
when you say
easy.
we, you're meaning muscle
Muscle
mixers,
mixes.
right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
yeah. So
Companies like
you've got
us.
the music that plays in the background of the gym. That's easily
Correct.
done in a global
Easily
license that is
done.
pretty simply done all across the world.
Yes.
Then you've got
Yes.
the price that you charge to instructors. So
Correct. Correct.
Muscle mixers pays a set amount, and you can predict that and charge it onto instructors, and then they're allowed to use that to deliver their classes.
Correct.
But then
Correct.
there's an added layer of complexity when it comes to
Okay. So
digital.
now, once it goes to video,
Hmm.
it's the video that's the problem.
Yep.
Once it goes to video, now the publishers come in and say, I want more money.
Yeah.
There's no set rate. There is no set rate. So not only do you have to negotiate with the artist, you have to negotiate with the publisher.
Right.
And oftentimes they want an advance. An advance could be, let's say, $1,000 for a song.
Yep.
And then you pay additional 3 cents every time that that video is downloaded or sold on a DVD or streamed.
Yeah. And so you talked about the 9 cents before. So that 9 cents was for playing it in public, right? That was the license that someone's bought.
It was for us to sell it.
To sell it, yeah, to sell it for the end use of being played in public by the purchaser. But then the other license that doesn't have that sort of fixed tariff, fixed fee, is the price of making a copy of the song, right? Is that how it's working in the States? Because I know that the concept of the mechanical copyright is that the minute you put it down to video, you've copied the song and made a duplicate, and that's not something that's covered within the license.
Well, it's the video that's the issue. It's once it goes to video, it's subject to a synchronization license.
Yeah.
And synchronization licenses in the US, and I'm pretty sure everywhere, have to be negotiated.
Right.
There is no, I don't know how it is in the UK. I really don't.
Yeah, it's the same.
I think it has to also be negotiated. There's no set fee. So because of that, it makes it really complicated. And sometimes they say no. It's not only the fee, it's also they could say no, or you can't reach the person, or the person died, or nobody knows who, manages the estate of that work. Yeah, there's just so much complexity when you have to, it's Prince, for example, is very difficult to license.
Yeah, there are certain artists who are well known within the industry of people working in your side of the industry of don't go near those songs.
Don't go near those songs.
Too much hassle, too much trouble.
Just too much, yeah.
And
but that's a great question, and that's unfortunate because it would be nice for them to be able to use it. Unfortunately, our mechanical use license does not carry over to video, and that's the reason. Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is, I guess that you've had, and this comes with a massive change in the way instructors are teaching classes, because I obviously know, having worked on the production side of fitness, and when we used to create the Beachbody Live videos, we wouldn't use the music that we would provide to instructors. We would use different music, and so for the very reason that we were teaching Insanity Live on video, and that same music that we were going to pass on to instructors for, say, round 12 or round 20, whatever it was, we didn't use that when we filmed. We use a completely rights-free music that was created for us bespoke by a DJ, who would then, and so all the rights were bought out, and we paid a certain fixed fee for that, and then the tempo of the music would just match the tempo of the music in the in the version that would be given out to instructors. And so if you've been working on the video side of it, this, and this is why all of those big Beachbody productions do not use original music, right?
Yeah.
Because there's an amount to be paid every time you use original music. And so one of the issues with the use case of instructors is that you have people like yourselves and all of the music producers that have gone and created this music for a certain use case, which is teaching in a class. And then suddenly every instructor wanted to teach it online, but unfortunately the law just doesn't work like that. And
doesn't work that way. Yeah.
The ways of using it aren't unlimited.
No, I forgot all about that. You're absolutely right. With Beachbody Live, we would produce covers for Beachbody for them to use, for you instructors to use in class. But the minute it went to video, they would have to clear royalty-free music.
Yeah.
That was, I like to call it as popular and unfamiliar is the way I like to look at it.
Yeah. I actually had a similar conversation with another person who works for a music producer, and he's campaigning to get rid of the term royalty free, because he says that it comes with connotations that imply that it's not as good as other music.
Exactly.
So now we've got this position that's always been the case, but it hasn't really touched on a lot of instructors, because most instructors weren't doing online stuff, and people just if they did teach something online, they stuck it on their YouTube. YouTube might have taken it down, but there wasn't the focus on it. So potentially a lot of people got away with using original music or using cover music in digital fitness just because no one was really focused on it. Flash forward to 2020. everybody in fitness is teaching digitally. There's a massive big focus on doing it. What have you done for Muscle Mixers to allow people to teach online? So there is types of music that can be used. We talked about that. Have you pivoted to the types of music that can be used across the board?
Yeah, we sure have. And one of the things for everybody to remember is it's how the class is delivered that determines the license required or who's responsible. So, for example, I want to make sure we talk about social media because social
Mm-hmm.
media is sort of the exception to the rule. We'll get there in a minute,
Yep.
but I'll tell you the way Muscle Mixes has pivoted. What we've done is we've created a package where an instructor can pay one flat fee of $600,
Mm-hmm.
629 a year, and use all of our royalty-free music on unlimited videos for the whole year. And I use it through an app so you can change the tempo, you can create your own mixes, all that kind of stuff. And, use it unlimited for a whole year. Now, we didn't
Mm-hmm.
have that before. We've always had royalty-free music, unfamiliar music, but
Yep.
and because we would license it out to various facilities or for production companies for video and TV,
Yep.
but it was about 30% of our business, and now everything's flipped.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
big
Yeah.
part of our business now. So yeah, that's what
At
we've
least, at
done.
least for a while.
Yeah,
Hopefully, we'll
at
get
least
back
for a
to an
while. I mean,
in-person,
who
an
knows how
in-person
long this is
business
going to
soon.
last? I know it's crazy, but yeah. So we've done that for the instructor. We've also, we have some one-offs that you can download. We allow you to use everything, all of our royalty-free music on social media and live streaming. But when it goes to on demand, that's when you're subject to that 629. On demand meaning if you press the record button when you're
Mm-hmm.
teaching and put it up on your own private website and sell it either as a download or as a subscription fee for the end user to play it as often as they want.
And so for instructors listening, I think they kind of like if hopefully they're beginning to get the idea of why there's all these different structures within music. So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about the unfamiliar royalty-free music that instructors can use how, when, and where they like. So they can, provided they pay the right amount of license, they can use
Correct.
it in person, they can use it live streaming, they can pre-record
Right.
and put it into an on-demand library. How does that music get created? Like, tell me a little bit about that, because I know from my
Hmm.
work in the industry that a lot of that music is actually really good music, and I think it's often got a bad rap. But particularly this year when so many DJs and artists are out of work, I know that there's just a lot of
Yeah.
really quality content and quality music that is now coming into that realm when it didn't before.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting that you're saying that because, there was a time there where in Hollywood they stopped producing movies and stopped producing TV shows and stuff.
Mm,
And because of that, all of those, there are companies out there, there are music companies that are just royalty-free music companies. And their biggest business is the film industry.
yeah.
So when they stopped producing, they were calling us up and saying, use
Right,
our
so
music,
it's flipped in turn. So there was a
it's
time when you
flipped.
couldn't get your call taken, and now you've got people
Exactly.
calling you. But please, can I create some music for you to give to instructors
Exactly.
to teach anywhere they like?
Exactly. Yeah. Here. Take it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a lot of great music out there. And the way we work is we we hire a producer to produce a song,
Mm-hmm.
or we do both. We hire to produce a certain number of songs,
Yep.
or we go through producer's libraries like the ones that we're talking to now and see
Mm-hmm.
what they have. Because the wonderful thing about musicians and music producers is they're always producing great music,
Mm.
and some of them have music that nobody even knows about.
Yep.
So rather than it just sit there in their computer, they're willing to give it to us, put it into our library, and if it's used, we pay them.
Yep.
So we've done a really great job. We've partnered with DJ Brian Howe.
Mm-hmm.
We're working with him on producing a lot of great music, and he's allowed us to sub-license his library. And I love Brian because he's an instructor, so he gets it. He knows what
Mm-hmm.
kind of music is motivating. I think the biggest challenge with royalty-free music is those people that teach a dance fitness type class, because it has to be more chorus verse chorus,
Right. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
and they like to have a set, lyrics become important. with something like that. But I think
Although I've
in
noticed that
most
there's
cases,
more
no.
lyric-based music coming into royalty-free recently.
Yep, we sure are. We have a lot of really great stuff. It's a lot easier today than it was back in the 80s to produce a song. I'm not
Yeah,
saying it's
exactly.
super,
Well, you can
I
have,
mean,
like, if you're someone that's got some talent and
mhm,
an Apple Mac
mhm,
with GarageBand or, whatever computer or
yeah.
software you want, you can essentially create a song.
Absolutely. I mean, you're never going to be able, there's nothing that takes the place of a song that you heard so much and that
Yep.
you love, and people, the participants can sing the words to. I mean, I get that. I
Mm.
totally get it. However, like you said, there's some songs, that we made a commitment early in March when this first started to say we are not going to just put out royalty-free music that's just, elevator type music.
Yeah, yeah,
We are
yeah,
going to make sure that the music improves. And we've been doing that. And
yeah.
we've
Hmm.
been working really hard at putting out great music and keep putting out more and more music. So the more we have available, the better it is for
I th-
everybody,
I think that there's like I certainly would say this, that there's a mental block with a lot of instructors who have historically used music that they know
Of
with not
course.
using that music. And I think that they think if people don't have that music that they recognize, that the class will be bad, and that they're
Yeah.
almost scared of
Yeah.
being like caught like with their pants down in front of their class. And by pants down, it means music that they don't know, therefore all of the focus is
Yeah.
on me. But I just
Yeah.
like I've spent a lot
Oh,
of this year sort of explaining to instructors that the music is undoubtedly a super important part of the exercise experience, and no one will
sure.
ever take that away. But there are when limitations are in place, then you just have to get creative with what you're
Yeah.
using and what you're doing. I think we've talked about this, Denise. When we started filming Shift, we used to take the unfamiliar royalty free and film to it. And then I
Okay.
realized that it would just be so much faster for our production process if we filmed without music. So
Oh.
all of our shift instructor videos and the videos that we put out
Hmm.
to our third party sort of platforms like Wixer and ClassPass, etc., are all filmed with zero music, and all of the music is added in
Hmm.
post. And that's nothing to do
Wow.
with the licensing. That's simply if someone makes a mistake, we don't have to rewind to the right part of the music. We can just film
Ah.
on through, edit in post. Super, super easy.
Oh, nice. Real great. Well, I have noticed something, and tell me I haven't taught in many years, but I do notice that there is a difference with music that is popular on video. It just doesn't sound as good because it feels like well, first of all, the instructor is talking a lot more because they're on video, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it competes sometimes.
Mm.
Their voice competes with the lyrics, and it sometimes sounds like a train wreck.
Yep. Yeah,
It
yeah, yeah.
depends. But so I think that's what I've heard a lot from instructors also, is that, you know what, I don't care if I don't use a popular song because those lyrics are just going to conflict with what I'm trying to say. And on video, it's different. When you're in a
Yeah.
live in-person class, you can shut up sometimes as an
Yeah.
instructor
Well, I
and just
mean,
let the music take you, but you can't do that with virtual, can you?
exactly. And I think that like, which highlights a massive point, which is that some of the pre-choreographed formats like the Les Mills programs, for example, where the music
Hmm.
is so important and super important. And like having taught these for many, many years, sometimes you would want to be silent while the crescendo of the chorus comes up. But
Absolutely.
unfortunately, you can't teach that virtual. And
You can't do that. Yeah,
for all the reasons we've just talked about, that song is not available to you. So
that's right. That's
so
right.
yeah, like the ability to be quiet and let the music speak for you
Hmm.
just doesn't exist in virtual because you can't use that song. So you got to,
Exactly.
amend your teaching process.
It's got to be hard for cycle teachers, indoor
Mm.
cycling. That's got to be the toughest because it's so dependent on the rhythm of the music and so forth. But yeah, I don't know. I guess our instructors teaching indoor cycling virtually? I guess they
So
are. Some of them are.
it's actually a really interesting question. So we have it's not an instructor format yet, but Shift Fitness has Ride, which is it's
Okay.
part of our on demand, and we put it out to some of our gym partners, and we use the unfamiliar royalty free music, and we just have to search a little bit more for the good
Yeah.
tracks,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's not like it's not quite the same, but some of the music is really good, and if you choreograph well to it, it's still got the ups, the downs, the drops, and
Yeah.
you can
Yeah.
make it work. What I did notice in the first lockdown, and I think it's been cracked down on a little bit now, is some of the really, really, really big cycle studios in the States and here in the UK were going out on Instagram with original music just playing in the background. And I was very, very surprised that more of them didn't run into massive issues with that, because they were just playing their Spotify playlist straight out on Instagram Live.
Well, Facebook owns Instagram, and they announced probably about April, May, that they were going to cut you off midstream.
And they do
not
too, right?
They
mute the feed.
They just mute you right off. Yeah. So Facebook and Instagram are, definitely 100% do not use popular music. It's going to either be muted, flagged,
just because you get away with it one time doesn't mean
exactly.
You're gonna get it. I think a lot of people were like, "Oh, I suddenly got muted on Facebook," and it's like, what happened is that you were skating under the
under the radar, exactly,
all those classes, and now you got caught.
Exactly. Now YouTube's a little different. They do have relationships with some artists and publishers. What I've seen though is they won't take you down; they'll keep you up, but they won't allow you to monetize it.
Right.
Yeah. So that's what I've seen with YouTube.
Cool. So that kind of gives an overview of the situation when it comes to instructors and music. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you think is on the topic of music for fitness instructors that we haven't touched on that you think is worth talking about?
Well,
as an industry veteran that's been doing it for...
oh, don't say veteran. That makes me sound old. 32 years, yeah.
Don't worry. As an industry veteran.
Now I feel old. I will touch on one other thing, and that's live streaming or, ACE does a great job of explaining. They call two different classes. Either one type of class is when you're teaching and there's nobody there.
Yeah, you're talking about the two-way live stream versus a one-way live stream.
Correct.
And you're right. They have a particular way of describing it that I've seen this article. Yep.
Yeah, it's a great article.
Shannon wrote it, maybe.
Shannon, yes. For sure. So when you're teaching two-way, live streaming on a meeting platform, not Facebook, not Instagram, not YouTube, that is the one area that's a little still unclear.
Oh, really?
The licensing. I have been told from an attorney that all you need is a public performance license through ASCAP BMI and get a media license, and you're okay to use anything.
Really? So like even original music?
Yep. That's what I've been told.
But of course, with the proviso that you can't record it and use it later or anything like that.
As long as you don't
contemporaneous broadcast only.
Correct. As long as you don't press record.
Yeah.
However, there are some schools of thought that says that you also need the synchronization license. So it's become a gray area. I think that's going to change. So I say, use anything you want until somebody says you can't.
I mean,
for right now.
But if you're using originals, then you're running a risk that
it's a risk. It's a big risk.
The less rights there are associated with your music, the less risks there are that you won't be able to use it.
Absolutely. And most royalty free is going to be 100% safe.
Exactly.
That's your safest way to go. So but that's it. I mean, that's the only thing I wanted to point out, because people ask these questions all the time.
Super frustrated about how the rules differ because they differ from state to state in the US. Or are they? No. Okay. So different from country to country.
Country to country.
Yeah, more complicated in some place. Like there's more agencies in the UK that collect different pieces of the pie and all that sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, I think that the point to write home about is that copyright is this legal thing that exists, and it exists to protect the creators of work so that other people can't free ride off the fruits of their labor, essentially. And then you've got all of these bodies who. There's no one law that says this is fine and that is not fine. This is all like a set of very complicated negotiations between artists, writers, then, as you said, the accountants, the agents, the record companies, then occasionally it gets litigated and the lawyers get involved. Sometimes the government suggests there's something, but you've got this massive like network and infrastructure that is constantly changing. And so when something fundamentally different happens, like the whole of fitness and the whole of the fitness industry goes online, you should expect that the rules may not be that clear, because the simple fact
Correct.
is that the whole industry is making it up a little bit as we go. And when something new happens,
Yeah.
like two-way live stream versus one-way live stream versus
Sure.
on demand, the various people at the various points of the chain all need to make a decision about how they're going to act with it. And then
Yeah.
that's all going to flow down to instructors. So instructors, if you
Well
can take one,
said.
if you can take one thing away from this, it's that the royalty free stuff that you get that's license free is the one thing that you can count on to be able
Yeah.
to utilize in any way, shape, or form.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, that was well said. Will, I can't even wrap it up any better than you just said.
It's because I was an intellectual property lawyer for not
Yeah,
for that long.
yeah,
I was a commercial lawyer for a while, but I spent 2 or 3 years working in intellectual property.
sure.
I did come to realize that if you go to the effort of and this is also now that I have my own company, I create workouts, I create an app. I understand that there's so much work goes into it, and I think that we sometimes have this strange opinion that because you can download something for free,
Sure.
like Napster and torrenting and all
Mm-hmm.
that sort of stuff, just because the facilities to get that content for free exist, you sometimes have the assumption that you should be able to get it for free. But if
Correct.
everybody
Yeah,
did that, then artists would never get paid, and artists
that's
would
true.
never have the ability to create the great stuff that you really want to do. So if we all just
Exactly.
fit in
Exactly.
fairly at each point in the value chain, then everybody's happy.
That is true. I will say that, the digital music industry is still fairly new,
Mm,
and they are changing. They are making some changes to streamline things and make things a lot easier. There's the Music Modernization Act that was passed, and I believe it's global. I'm not
mhm,
sure. I know in the U.S., but they are trying to put things in place to make things easier, not as much for the fitness industry. And I have been working behind the scenes at trying to make life easy for fitness instructors
mhm.
with music and to be taken seriously
Yeah.
as an industry, because we really haven't been by the music industry until maybe recently, with
Mm.
Peloton and Zumba and some of the bigger names.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, for sure.
yeah,
Excellent. Well, Denise, thank
this
you
is
so much
great.
for jumping on the podcast and helping to explain to instructors all of the different things that go into creating music for fitness classes. Best of luck
Absolutely.
with the remainder of 2020, and I'm sure we'll speak again.
Thank you so, so much. It was really great being here, Will. Thank you for having me. And if you have any questions or anything, you know where to find me through Will
Absolutely. And we'll
and
stick links to all of the stuff you do at Muscle Music and Muscle Mixes, in the show
Mrs.
notes.
That's okay. Sounds
Cheers.
great. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.